Show me a working model of a flat Earth, you stupid fluffer!
Here's a working model of a flat geocentric topographical plane. Now show me a working model of your corkscrewing impossible. You can't because it's so ridiculous that it simply doesn't work. Your senses are not lying to you. It's the sun, moon, and stars that are in motion, exactly as they appear to be. To believe otherwise is exactly that, a belief. By believing in such a cosmology, you're denying your own experience and intelligence. You're looking at a cosmology that matches your observable, testable reality. So, by believing the opposite, you're literally being willfully ignorant. Flat Earth is rooted in the scientific method, and the globe Earth is rooted in scientific theory. Therefore, Flat Earth stands on proven facts, and the globe Earth just spins in your imagination. Subscribe to Unbind Your Mind on YouTube for more like this.
If you get tired of Globers bitching about a model, or sunrise angles, or star trails, or sunlight, or eclipses, anyone can always reference this model The reason it is called Shane's model is strictly so you can use it, and I can take all the criticism, insults, ridicule, jokes, attacks, etc. The general idea is that the community gets the considerable benefit of presenting an accurate model and using it to explain several normal phenomena at once. Then only I get the drawbacks of all that will surely come from it, and everyone else will benefit. I planned it this way because I largely don't care about any of the Globers. They could pile on the hate over here so we can press forward. You know, fuck me for saying the word model and for bendy light or for whatever. If that's the case, no hard feelings. One last thing. The smaller dome in the model simply represents the limit of an observer's view, a spherical limit with a radius of 359.3. The math that supports that is here. The descriptions are entirely reworked, mostly spelling error-free and entirely plausible. So feel free to bring it up in debates, forums, streams, podcasts, or whatever you like. The model adequately emulates and explains all of these observations. Sunrise, sunset, moonrise, moonset, moon phases, moon's apparent rotation, sun's position on equinox, seasons, some aspects of solar and lunar eclipses, star trails, 24 hours day-night at the North Pole and Antarctica, celestial poles, why people south of the equator can see the same stars rotate clockwise around a singed celestial pole at the same time at different continents, Southern Cross observations. Cheers everyone. The full description is below. This model does not assume a physical sun nor moon, which will show collective convergence for every observer on Earth. This matches only their apparent positions as observed across the plane. The Bislin model acknowledges this and moves all celestial bodies to a nearly infinite distance. This does nothing more than create a triangle large enough that you can mathematically abstract your way into the inverse of everything you experience. The truth is there is a limit to one's visual space, and this limit is necessarily geometrically spherical, because one never observes objects in anything, but their apparent location within one's personal celestial sphere. There is no need to explain a tiny ball of heat mysteriously powering itself at 3D 100 miles above the plane. This is not reality. We feel that we only need to model the exact apparent position of each observer. We do not have to provide an explanation of what we think is required. This model relays the apparent size and positions of the sun, moon, and star constellations. It depicts their paths as well as the day-night terminator. By simply observing reality and plotting the data on a planar map, we demonstrate that the sun, moon, and stars can move beyond the limits of one's vision and become unresolvable by the naked eye. We show how this can be conflated with the assertion that objects actually drop down below the horizon when, in reality, they are only apparently dipping below the horizon when they exceed the limit of your vision. It is simple and easy to understand without bullshit. Sun-moon tracks. In 24 hours, the fixed stars rotate approximately one more than 360, so that at 365.25 days, the star constellations return to the same place in the sky. This is seen by incrementally advancing day if you're clicking the field and using arrows up or down. The dome grid advances each day by approximately 1. Advance the time in 24H steps, and the sun noticeably moves between the solstice lines. The sun also traces figure 8. This is caused by the sun's ecliptic plane at 2344 to the orbital plane. The paths of the sun and moon are visible against the fixed star background dome grid by checking the options sun track and moon track. To describe the tracks, eclipses button, they correspond to observable reality. The tracks are derived from the solar and lunar cycles and are absolutely not exclusive to either model. It would be extremely dishonest to claim anything else. Sorry, Walter. Retrograde motion of the moon's track. The sun's path remains fixed on the dome grid, but the moon's path slowly rotates retrograde against the dome grid and rotates one full rotation in 698 days. This is due to the oscillation and intersection of the moon's orbit caused by the distant sun. Currently, the moon ecliptic is such that the path of the moon extends the path of the sun north-south by about 5 degrees. Approximately 400 days later, the path of the moon moves inside the path of the sun by about 5 degrees. This observation was translated into a planar model. Eclipses. The intersection points of the sun and moon paths are called knots. 2 knots are marked by a green dot. If the sun and moon are on 2 opposing knots, a lunar eclipse occurs. The sun and moon on the same knot will result in a solar eclipse. Play demo eclipses from step 6 on. This flat Earth model can predict the solar and lunar. It can also absolutely predict the optical effect conflated with the moon's alleged shadow on Earth during a solar or vice versa. It uses a ratio of the cycle that is based on the radius of a shadow, as postulated by Philip in the 1700s. It was first calculated for a lunar eclipse, but the ratio applies to all future eclipses which belong to an appropriate series. This ratio is then applied to the predicted path to dynamically widen or shorten the path in order to accommodate the penumbral and umbral radial intersection as a visible sphere on the plane. We then apply this integer as a scalar to correctly approximate the size of the optical effects conflated with shadows. All of the maps onto which the eclipse can be projected use the same globular coordinate system, unfortunately. Now, it can be shown that heliocentrism cannot predict eclipses at all. They can only interpret the cycle data in the same way the ancients did and apply more refined mathematics. Moon phases and orientation. The model shows the moon phases and the orientation of the moon with respect to the observer's horizon. The apparent rotation of the moon during the day is due to the fact that the camera's up vector remains perpendicular to the surface of Earth while following the path of the moon. This perfectly matches reality. Equinox. This model produces the correct apparent sun positions during an equinox. The sun rises due east at 6:00 a.m. and sets due west at 6:00 p.m. Poles. This model produces a 24-hour day and night on the North Pole and in Antarctica. Heliocentric model. Simple observations mathematically translated to this planar projection perfectly map the paths of the sun, moon, and stars' star trails as they appear to the observer inside their personal celestial sphere. As with all other celestial observations, the equinox, the solstice knots, and the day-night terminator can be derived from basic observation and data applied to the planar projection. No need for baseless assumption. The heliocentric model utterly fails here. Newton's laws can be reduced to exclude mass and still manage to describe the same periodicity and thusly the same relationship. No need for an exclusivity claim here at all, is there, Walter? Shapes on the dome. The shape of sun, moon, and star constellations appear on the personal celestial sphere exactly as they do in reality and when projected onto the globe. Again, because we invoke the same radius to describe the spherical limit of our celestial view, the very same observations become easily explainable when using all of the normal conventions, with no need to invent branches of physics and invert reality. All features of this model are derived only from observations of the sky. Observations of the sky have always been kinematically equivalent, equally applicable to geocentric and heliocentric model. This was rather the point of the invention of special and general relativity nonsense. Problems with the Shane's flat Earth model. Distances. Many people misunderstand distances on map projections. On the AE map, distances measured in an exactly north-south direction are correct. Other measurements are also proportionally correct. Data translation between projections is tied to the coordinates we use. The longitude and latitude we use in any of the appropriate 200 map projections will ensure the distances between those points remain accounted for at scale. Please learn how map scaling works if this seems inadequate to you. Only an absolute moron would expect visual distance to be equal in an equal area or equal distance cartographic transformation. Right, Walter? Personal celestial sphere. The sun and moon trace specific paths across the celestial sphere. The paths of the celestial bodies are directly mapped from observation to the planar projection. They also follow the cycle of the heavens, with no need for gravity, Newton, nor the very lackluster performance of gravity-based predictions of systems with 2 or more bodies. It was jaw-dropping to see that poor Walter actually wrote that gravity caused this. I assume it was because he knew he would never have to answer any challenges. Show me the math, which uses the gravitation from all of the forces Walter listed, and I will immediately remove this section. Moon phases and field rotation, moon phase and apparent orientation, as shown, perfectly represent what every observer on Earth sees, correct to their location. The 15-year solar cycle and the 18 1011-month lunar cycle have been understood for so long that people eventually forgot and are now incorrectly perceive their paths. Only in modernity do the vast majority of people wander about under their own personal clock without the ability to read it. How sad. The day-night terminator. The shape that matches reality is a bit peculiar, and it changes over the course of a year. The shape not only depends on the location of the sun, but its height and speed as well. Again, we know the sun circles the plane at a 23.4-degree tilt, and this perfectly defines the terminator line. There is absolutely no reason to invoke bendy light in order to explain any of these observations. The model simply matches what we see. It represents reality. Missing the third dimension, we need to correct the inherent misunderstanding in the assumption of the physicality of any dome. Modeled here is a personal celestial sphere. As it turns out, the personal celestial sphere is a visual limit imposed on one's spherical view of the heavens. It most simply describes the particular visible slice of the heavens, and it moves that amount with you wherever you go. This is such an elegant, beautiful explanation to what had been perplexing the flat Earth community for years: how the stars work. The personal celestial sphere, once properly understood, is a perfect explanation for everything we see in the sky. It explains the curved nature of the arcs of summer and winter, the behaviors of the sun and moon, as well as the apparent non-movement of the static stars in relation to each other. Every single stellar observation projection is explained as well as, if not better than, any heliocentric explanation. Any person who incorrectly assumes a visual distance scale also assumes things to be visually identical in size and demonstrates a massive misunderstanding of proper distance scaling inherent in all map projections, particularly in the AE map. It's as if everyone has forgotten that the AE map is equal to the globe map, which is also equal to 199 other map projections. The choice of projection does not matter. They are all the same. They all represent the same distances. We can make predictions based on cycles as well as the next guy, so we won't need help there. As we keep saying, every observation in the sky is equal between geocentric and heliocentric perspectives. People seem to be intentionally misunderstanding that at this point. Light bending. Absolutely not required in any way, shape, nor form. Observable reality matches the model in every way. I cannot imagine a better fit. To now try to invent a need for bendy light would only publicly highlight the ineptitude of a lower tier glober and their inability to learn and adapt, a vital skill in these times. Our model perfectly represents azimuth and elevation of every celestial object in its apparent position. This is all that we ever see, so thank you again, Walter. Light bending over night shadow. To match the 24-hour daylight in Antarctica data from time and date com, the light forms a shape congruent to a coffee cup caustic effect. Shadows of eclipse. Although this model can predict the date of eclipses, it was argued that it can be used for nothing else. Please check the provided links to review the absurdity of those claims. Conclusion. Some observations, like the positions of the sun, moon, and star constellations, as well as sun-moon-rise set, can be explained by a flat Earth model if we allow ourselves to adhere to the mathematical principle of equivalence. What a concession. Some final thoughts. 1 distances on the AE map are 100% 1. 1 equivalent when you comprehend how to accordingly use the scale provided with the ruler, which represents longitude. 2 learn about maps. Hopefully, the Covarian scaling and lossless unlimited translations between the projections will teach you this valuable lesson. Equinox, solstice, this model draws a perfectly circular orbit of the Earth around the Sun and a perfectly circular orbit of the Moon around the globe Earth. This is because the planar Earth has no moronic need for ellipticity because they didn't back themselves into a logical corner by making shit up. This model chooses to match. Spring equinox at 12 was not March 2017. Solar eclipse at 18 in UTC, August 21, 2017. Azimuth and elevation of the Sun and Moon are also slightly inaccurate according to the assumed heliocentric requirement due to the use of circular instead of elliptical orbits. This affects also moon phase. Computing day-night terminator. The day-night terminator is derived from time and date com to match the reality as follows. 1. A circle perpendicular to the Earth-Sun axis in the Sun coordinate system is computed depending on the Sun's position at a point in time relative to the intersection, not of the equatorial plane of the Earth and the ecliptic plane of the Sun. This is entirely possible for both the models. This circle was then transformed into the global Earth coordinate system. However, this coordinate system cannot be used. Any questions can be sent to Shane St. Pierre at proton.com. To take a look at this wonderful tool for all the globers who are laughing at the personal celestial sphere or the personal azimuthal grid of observability or the azimuthal grid of vision. For all the people who don't understand that concept, because honestly the people who laugh are the ones who don't understand, right? Let's look at how you actually use the celestial sphere and how it is used to portray everything in the sky. Literally, without the personal celestial sphere, you wouldn't be able to identify any object, any declination, any time, etc. So they do use a globe here, like, ooh, you guys got me. It's a globe, right? So they're demonstrating on a map on Earth, and they're showing you over here in the regular Mercator where you can choose to manipulate, showing you the, of course, very well-known longitude and latitude system that we are so wonderfully comfortable with and familiar with. And then we'll just put it over here. We'll show all this stuff, I think, because why not? We'll add some stars and we'll show some star trails, right? And then we'll just make sure we have all the constellations. So we would pick a location, and this would of course move and scale variantly, exactly as Walter Bisland's personal azimuthal grid would, right? Scaling with, what is it? Latitude. Everything is latitude dependent. And when we look, say, over here, and then this would show us what stars would do, right? So if, of course, on the left, we're imitating Earth spin, which of course is the globular inverted perception of the stars rotating above flat Earth. No big deal. We're all comfortable with our perspectives and our positions here. So they pick a spot, and then this small little dome here imitates what you would see for the stars. This is the only way to emulate stars. This is the only way we can envision stars, right? So personal azimuthal grid, personal celestial sphere, whatever you want to call it, when you laugh and say that everyone has one of these, that is literally how it works. That is how your observer-based grids work. In Stellarium, you have the azimuthal grid, which is observer-based, has to be personalized, and that is the only way you can compare azimuth, right? Otherwise, you'd have no idea where you tell a friend on the other side of the world where a star would appear. So, again, everyone should be aware of what the model is that you use before you want to laugh at the model that's going to replace it. That's better. Thanks. Just going to bring out a couple of old videos I did on the sunrise angles all over Earth using this model. Again, if you have an explanation for sunrise angles for more than 2 observers all over flat Earth without using this, I'd love to hear it. Until then, this is the only working answer that I know of. Every time they say triumphantly that this distance doesn't match, therefore Earth isn't flat, you should have a little chuckle because it's pretty funny. So as for sunrise angles, here we are on Bisland's model. It's centered over Western Australia. It's on October 12, 2021. If you don't know how to use Bisland's model, the green ones move observer lat and longitude. I've centered it over Western Australia using those two. And then you can move the time forward, and the time will move the sun and the moon over the observer, if you see. Right, so as it moves, this is sunrise. Right here, it pops up on the observer, and it says this is the azimuth, and this is the elevation that you would observe at sunrise. As for directions, right, everywhere away from the center is south, because north is the center. So over here we have, this one is north, south, east, west. It rises a little bit south of east, and it sets, if you notice, a little bit south of west, right? Just like this shows. Boop, and there it's gone, can't be seen. There it sets and it can't be seen, and it sets and it can't be seen. So these angles, observation angles, match observations, match reality. If we look at solar noon, it would be right about when the sun's above it. So that's why we say the sun is over here, but the relative position to the observer is seen over here, a little bit at a different inclination, a different elevation angle, right? So each observer sees this sun in a different spot depending on where they are. If we move, we're not changing the time, we're not moving the sun. But if we move this observer, say, to Eastern Australia, look what happens. You see, just like timeanddate.com, just like Witsit put forth in his azimuthal grid of observability, the elevation angle is changing. You see, now it's at azimuth 294, elevation 72.5. Here, let's go up so you can see that. So all over Australia, this is all the same time. So this is solar noon for this guy, not so over here. Now again, this uses the Gleason's map as the base, which is a globular projection using globular longitude and latitude lines, which means that this country, this continent, is not this wide, because as we pointed out before, these longitude and latitude grid lines are much bigger than at the center, because there's the nature of a circle, right? So super easy to understand, super easy concept. Earth's flat. And real quick, I'm just going to play a couple seconds of Durf's video that's deep inside the rabbit hole, David Weiss's video. Using the same model, they called it the personal atmospheric dome with a pad. I personally don't like that because it invokes the concept of a dome, and then you have globers asking if they can see the same star if your personal firmament touches their firmament, which is, you know, absurd and ludicrous. So that's why I like the terminology azimuthal grid of observability, which it likes as azimuthal grid of vision. That mean essentially the same thing. It is the same thing as this concept as well, but I'll just play a couple minutes of this video. I just want to note that they show the laser tank of the bendy light to mimic what this Walter Bisland's supposed bendy light is doing, and I don't think that's the right tactic. I think that you should just argue that the light actually doesn't bend in physical reality and tangible reality. It's only an optical effect that it appears to bend, and that kind of solves the issue, nips it right in the bud. Even though I do like this animation of the, you know, the light bending, it actually doesn't have to bend in reality to match our observations. So. Here's an example of a quote flat earth debunk, right? That all the anti-flat earthers like to throw around. This one's actually just a pretty good animation, so I'm going to show a little bit of it. It's about sunrise angles. It's about trying to match up observer-based sunrise angles using anything resembling the Gleason's map. And typically, we'd have to argue that this is, a matter of personal perspective, that the sun is sort of a personal ray. Each corpuscular ray is personal to the observer. That's what I think. That's what the azimuthal grid of observation shows. So let's see what they're arguing here. So right in the middle of Africa, 23.5 north, and that 0 that. Okay, so they do one observation, and it matches up. They start to add more, and more, and more, and more. And if they're trying to look at the same physical, actual object for actual location, it doesn't work, it doesn't line up. It gets crazy looking like this. This is always gets me. They straighten it out, and oh look, it all works because we all have them pointing the same half-ass direction, right? Yeah, that's absurd. What a cop-out. We'll just move it infinitely far away, then all the vectors match. It's goofy. Now, I'm not saying that this is not really a debunk, because if you look at the personal dome model, because thanks Walter, he actually outlines this perfectly. Now, if you bring it back to where we started here, it gave us this observation, right? So 23.5 degree north, right at 0 latitude at the equator. Let's see, can we find that? Oh look, it's already lined up. So here it is, exactly as outlined there. Here's the first observation they started with, right at solar noon. One observation, check, good. Except it doesn't break there. We can move this observer all to the other places that they had those elevation angles matching. This sun would be. This is an apparent position, and this is the physical position. If we move this around, we can see. Let's see. There we go. Personal positions, right? Solves this problem at least perfectly. No issues whatsoever. Each person sees the sun on their own arc of horizon, right? Their own personal grid of vision. So because each observer has their own personal grid of observability, you can actually move this around. All about this, every ray of light that they traced in their video, you could mimic right here. Right, so I'll play them side by side then here. So here's their ridiculous debunk, and here's each one of these observers having a different elevation angle to match where the sun is, without trying to move the sun a billion miles away and have everything be parallel, which is just such a cop-out. You see, totally works. Totally works. Can be any one of these observers. We'll see at a different elevation angle, and they all line up. And since we're on about light rays and the solstice and the equinox and what's possible, here's a quick little video I put together showing the possible permutations of light, for all the different times a year, on the globe model using the Mercator, and on the flat Earth model showing a whole bunch of ways on how this works perfect. So I'm not saying this is the de facto perfect model for everything, but for flat Earth, this explains an awful lot of actual observations in reality regarding the celestial objects. All celestial phenomenon, I feel, is explained by this personal grid of vision, or personal azimuthal grid of observability, or the personal dome model, whichever your flavor you want to call it. This is the same concept. It fixes a lot of things. I would say without this, we don't have an argument for the different sunrise angles and sun positions all over Earth, and the equinox and the solstice and things. With it, it works perfectly, but without it... Well, just to be clear, we didn't want to not credit Walter. Of course not. We love Walter. That's why Thanks Walter was such a huge thing. But to link to the originator's website, you just have to go to the bottom and click on the meme. Right? And the meme will launch you right to Walter's website. No big deal. Thanks, Walter.